Hey everybody, just wanted to start a new build series on what I'm calling the RAV-4. Now, I don't mean to be a spin-off of the Toyota vehicle, but it just so happened that I've already got up to RAV3, and obviously RAV4 is next in line sequentially, so this is going to be the build of the RAV4. Now, you're probably wondering, uh-oh, did something happen to RAV3? Well, no. In fact, as I'm starting the build here, I want to show you RAV3 is still in perfect shape as it flies by, but I do want to tell you that I'm building a RAV4 for different testing purposes. I need a RAV4 because RAV3 can't do what we're going to do. One of the, well, I wouldn't say the number one reason for it is we're implementing a new what used to be called the RPM. We are now changing it to the RFC, the Rocket Flight Computer. And the reason for that is, as the RPM, as it was initially created, did monitor the performance of the rocket. It could give you all the stats, statistics, you know, the data, the flight performance and everything. So RPM made sense. It was a performance monitor. But now it's transitioning into a device that can not only monitor all that same data, but now we can trigger events to occur, which is more of a computer function as opposed to a monitoring function. So we are now changing it to the RFC, the Rocket Flight Computer. Again, it's going to continue to maintain and track and monitor all the data that it normally does. But you've noticed recently that the RPM, as it still was called then, successfully is activating the ACE unit. It is triggering it to deploy the ACE per a computer command. Well, we're starting to implement more and more functions into that unit, so it's becoming more of a computer than a monitor. But the big thing about this, and this is what excites me about the RAV4, is we are going to start testing out air starts using the RAV4. So again, it requires all new building because I'm going to have to build in some conduit to run wiring, a different booster mount setup down at the base, a lot of little intricate details there that we're going to build into the RAV4. But what I was alluding to earlier was, as opposed to building this as a 24mm mount, I'm going to build this as an 18mm motor mount for the upper stage. Now the booster is going to stay 24mm, so I can launch on D12 zeros and E12 zeros. But the upper, what we call the sustainer, is now going to fly on what we in Estes world would be considered A, B's, and C motors, and in the world of Quest motors, Aerotech, we're getting up into the D's. Now, again, one of the major testing things for this is, can you ignite? Well, can you boost with a black powder and sustain with a composite? You cannot adapt those two together. We've tested them. Joe over on his channel did a test when he tried to stage a black powder to a composite. Now, I have successfully done that once with my Spirit rocket by accident. By chance and luck, I was able to stage it, but it shouldn't have worked, and it normally wouldn't work. So how do you light a composite motor as a second stage? Well, you got to do an air start. So that's the goal of this testing, is we're going to run an air start ignition source from the RFC up in the nose through the ACE, down the body tube, and ignite the Aerotech composite motor that's going to be above the booster. So that's a whole lot of explanation as to the purpose of the RAV4, but in similar fashion, we're basing it on an ESAM 58 rocket. I will quickly go through this, and I'm going to open it up on camera, and we will do a quick inventory, although I'm not going to be using everything in the kit, and that's been the case with the other ones as well. But we are going to do a full-length body tube. Okay, there's something inside there. Oh, we got a motor tube. This will be used because this is an 18mm. I don't have to upgrade to the 24 like before. What else we got? We're going to use the nose cone. We can use the spacer if need be to space the motor of the engine. mount or thrust ring, whatever you want to call it. We are going to utilize the screw-on retainer mount. No engine hook, it's not friction fit. Now in times past with the RAV-1, 2, and 3, you'll remember I upgraded this to a 24. We're going to leave this as an 18 millimeter. So we're going to have to use that. And for fins, I'll show you the fins. We will be using the main fins on the body. And I can, like I've done before, use these fins for the booster. Now, here's the example of the booster that I built before. This is the one you saw fly previously. And I cannot reuse this booster because it's designed in such a way that it requires the two engines to be taped together, like you do in a standard staging type setup. This will not allow me to fit the wiring and do what I need to do for air start. So this will be useful in other rockets and projects, even the RAV-3 if I want to multi-stage that one. But for the sake of air starting, I need to go with a different booster. So I'm going to basically build the same booster again with just a different mounting technique. So we can use these fins for that, use these fins for the main body. Again, the main body tube will use full length, nose cone. Externally, it's going to look just like the RAV-3. It's just the internals are going to be different. One thing I'm going to utilize, and I'll show you, I've been kind of processing this through my mind. I'm going to utilize a coupler to attach the booster to the main body. Let's just say this is the bottom portion of the rocket. I'm going to glue in a coupler halfway down, and then the motor tube is going to fit flush with the bottom of that coupler, but that's going to require some well, I'll use the two centering rings back here, but I'm going to have to construct a new centering ring that's going to fit inside of the coupler. Once that's on, then the booster will simply slide onto the coupler, but not glued, and then of course when it burns out, it ejects, it'll eject off. The air start will ignite the 18 millimeter motor, and the reason I'm saying we got to keep it down to the 18 millimeter is because I'm going to leave room for the wires to come out between the motor tube and the coupler. So a 24 millimeter would be too big of a diameter, so we're going to shrink that down. Plus, we're going to be running the Quest or Aerotech D composite motors anyway, so those are 18 millimeters. So that's the plan for this build. I'm going to clear the workbench off, and we're going to start building normally as we would with the like we did with the RAV-3. But I am going to construct a different motor mount setup with different centering rings, and we'll play with that as we get it more into it. So let's get started. So after you've now seen the opening intro on this project, I have kind of modified some of my ideas as far as the engine mount and the couplings for the staging. So I'm going to have to order some parts, and I'll just leave it at that. When they come in, then of course we'll build that segment. So while we wait for things to show up in the mail, there are plenty of other things that we can do first. And one of those things is build the fins. And I'm going to do these fins identically to the way I did RAV-1, 2, and 3. First, I want to just, while it's still in the balsa template, I want to go and sand it lightly. Now, I've not sanded it in the past. I just glued the plastic sheets directly onto it, and they came out just fine. That was never an issue, but I want to see if I can get any smoother and or better adhesion. Not that it was bad before. I just want to see if there's any difference in sanding it. Probably won't notice anything, but you know, it doesn't hurt to try it. So then we just take our X-Acto knife, and I want to cut out little tabs. Okay, we've got all 4 fins cut out. Now you'll notice that the fins have little notch marks where those little tabs were. We want to sand those down and get them flush so we can do them all together, and that'll keep all the fins equal to one another. So I'm just sort of pressing them down into the bench, making sure they're all equal. Then I'm going to take my sandpaper and just sand them all together. Okay. And pinch hard when you do this so you don't lose your positioning. Okay. Okay, so now that the fins are sanded down, they're all equal, we can go ahead and mix up some epoxy, and I've already got my plastic sheet. This is 0.10, well, so it's 1/100th of an inch is what this is, 0.010 inches thick. It's super thin, super pliable, very flimsy, but it adheres really good to the wood, and once the epoxy is with it, it's solid as rock. So let me go ahead and mix up some epoxy. I'm gonna use 30-minute, that way I can get all 4 done and not have to rush it. And then I'll let this side dry, and then we can cut them out and do the other side. Okay, now the key is you want to scrape off as much as you can, leaving behind just a thin film of glue on the balsa. See, I was able to pull that much off right there. And now I've got all that to work with to spread it down to the tip. Okay, now we're just going to scrape that off. Just like so. And then we're just going to lay it down on the plastic. Just like so. Clean my hands off with some alcohol. Now, one thing you can do too is if you've got a roller, I use this hard rubber roller here just to help press it down and kind of work out any air bubbles or any spots that aren't completely flat. Just kind of work that in. Okay, now I'm going to do the other 3 off camera. Once I'm done with it, I'm going to lay these between my 1/4-inch plywood presses with the wax paper on top and bottom, and then we'll pull them out when they're dry, and I'll show you how I cut them out and do the other side. Okay, one other thing we can do while we're waiting for parts to show up and for the fins to dry with the epoxy on the plastic sheeting is we can go ahead and glue on our engine retainer to the motor mount. 18mm fits on like a glove. Unlike the 24mm where we have to beef up the end a little bit with some extra tubing, this one fits nice and snug as is. The only difference between this epoxy and the other epoxy is this is JB Weld. This is actually, they call it like liquid metal. It's a steel type product that starts at liquid and then it turns to like solid metal. It's really hard, but the important thing is it's heat resistant, so it's really good for high heat areas, which obviously the motor mount and the nozzle end is going to get very hot. Really the only thing I want to do is I want to scuff up the inside of the cap or the threaded part a little bit. That way the JB weld will adhere a little bit better, grab a little bit better. There we go, just kind of roughing that up. Now, when you glue these on, let me go ahead and sand just the edge of this as well. The glue is going to ooze out if you put it in the plastic, because it's going to push it out the plastic in. So I'm going to put the glue on the tube. That way when I push the cap on, it's going to ooze the epoxy to the back side, and we can actually use that as a fillet. There we go, just got that scuffed up a little bit. Okay, now this took hardly any at all, JB weld, but I just want to kind of run it around. Right around the edge. Again, it doesn't take much because it's going to squeeze it, and it's going to squeeze it out is what it's going to do. Okay, that should be enough. Now as I push this in, I'm going to twist it as well, and that's going to help spread the glue and get full coverage over the whole thing. There, just like that. Now we do have a little bit oozing out, so what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to take a Q-tip and some isopropyl alcohol and use that to wipe off any excess JB weld that may have come out of that seam. There, see, we did get a little bit, but everything else looks good, nice and clean in there now. It's flushly mounted, and we did get a little bit of seepage out the back, which is good. In fact, I'm going to use this Q-tip to help run a fillet. Right, let me use the other end now. Plus that'll help kind of clean up some of the spread. Let me get another Q-tip. Of course, this is all just cosmetic. You know, I tend to think that a clean looking rocket is going to fly better. It's just my perception. So there we have it. So now this can dry. I'm going to let this dry overnight, and hopefully by tomorrow we'll be ready to glue on the other half of the plastic on the fins. Okay, in this step I'm going to try something I've never done before, and I've seen it done a few times from a few different modelers, and they seem to be happy with it. Now, you know, when I normally sheet my balsa fins on a small scale, I'll usually use just regular copy paper and wood glue to paper the fins. But I've seen recently where folks are using label paper or adhesive backed paper you could buy at, you know, just your general store for printing in your printer, but it makes decals basically. But it's like a paper sticky back. I don't know how else to describe it. And it looks so simple that I kind of brushed it off thinking, well, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Well, let's give it a try. So I've got these fins. These are for the booster. When we get to that stage of building the booster, I want to have these ready to go. So now in this case, I definitely do want to sand them down a little bit because the paper, I'm leaving a little residue, it looks like. The paper's thinner than the plastic, and it will show obviously more imperfections. Maybe a little bit of grain or dents or dings in the wood, so it doesn't hurt to sand these down at all. Okay. Now, what I'm thinking, well, you know what I'm going to do, just like before, I'm going to cut them all out, so I'll kind of speed up the camera here, and then I'll sand all the edges down, and then we'll go and lay them down on the paper. Okay, just like I did on the main fins, I'm gonna line them up best I can, and then sand them equally flat. Okay, let's see if it's as easy as they say it is. So I'm gonna peel off the backing, and I'm just gonna lay each fin down rather quickly so we don't get dust on there. I'm gonna blow the dust off the fins as I get them. Oops. Oh, that didn't do what I thought it'd do. Okay. So let's just lay them down one at a time. Okay, I'm gonna get my roller. And I'm just gonna lay these down between some heavy books, or put some weight on them. I saw other people, they let them dry overnight, or I don't really know why do that, because it's not like a glue adhesive. So I figure once it's on, but I'm just gonna leave it as is for now, and put some weight on it and see if that yields any better results. Okay, I've given everything here overnight to dry, and no doubt the epoxy is good on the fins. I'm not so worried about that. And I'm not worried about the booster fins, but it's just weird to me that we're attaching it with adhesive backed paper, which I don't know if putting it under the press overnight did any good, or if it was ready to go right as soon as I stuck it down. I don't know. But real quick, I just want to go ahead and do some trimming and just see kind of how it came out. And we'll put the other side on. Just tracing along the side of the fin. Let's see, I'm gonna use a paper towel to stick those down to. Excuse me. Okay. I mean, it feels like it adhered pretty well. So I'm optimistic. And I know other people, use this technique and they swear by it. You know what? I'm gonna say that's pretty good. And if I seal the edges, although it may not need sealing, I don't know. We'll see when we get to that point. But let me go ahead and get the rest of these cut out. I'll do that off camera, and then I'm gonna seal. I'm gonna sheet the other side the same way I did the first side. So let me set this out of the way, and then I will cut out one of these fins and show you how that works here. So same technique. Now there's a little resistance in some places because in certain spots the epoxy actually kind of oozed out from the side. So as you're cutting along the fin edge, you'll encounter little rough spots of epoxy. You can kind of hear it popping there as we're going through it. Okay, that one broke free. One more side to go here. There we go. So as you can see, that just comes out beautiful. Smooth as glass, flat, straight, clean. I really like the plastic technique. But for the smaller fins, you know what? I'm thinking this might be the way to go, the adhesive back. It's a lot easier, cleaner, neater. No chance of warpage because you don't have the moisture like the wood glue provides. So, I'm gonna have to rethink about the idea of using wood glue and paper. So there you go. So I'm gonna do the rest of these off camera, and then I'm going to sheet the other sides and put them in the press the same way. So the next time you see these, they will be completely done, sheeted on both sides. Okay, just to give you a quick update on things, I've got the motor mount, baffle, and the conduit for the air start wiring already started and just about complete. And I'm going to show you how I basically finish off this portion of it. Just to give you a quick background, so what I did was I took a BT60 baffle and I obtained some brass tubing, 3/16 inch brass tubing, which is large enough to pass 2 wires through for this igniter. And what I did was I had to drill an additional hole in the back of the aft back plate, and I routed the tubing through it at the same time gluing the bulkheads into the baffle, and I glued the brass tubing with JB weld, and it's still drying. I've got it tack glued with some CA, so it's gonna hold itself while I do what I gotta do next. But anyway, I want to show you how we're gonna get the wiring through the baffle without interfering with the baffle's function. So once we get the wire north of the top bulkhead, then it's free to float without any conduit for protection. But we got to protect the wiring while it's north of the motor mount and until we get to the baffle. Now the other thing I went ahead and did was I've already built the motor mount, and you've seen me do this 1,000 times before in other projects. So and another reason I didn't show you me doing this is because I was kind of making it up on the fly and I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. And I didn't want a lot of ums and trying to figure things out while on camera. I wanted to take my time and think things through as I did them. So what I did was I drilled 2 3/16 inch holes in the centering rings as well that this can pass through. Just like that, and it's going to stick out about 1/8 of an inch. I really don't want too much tubing coming up because that's going to take away some of our space that we can utilize to run wiring and fit things in if we need to. So about 1/8 of an inch out. Now I'm ready to glue this onto the centering rings. The only thing is, how do you get the alignment this way? So what I'm going to use is my body tube. We're going to temporarily use it to hold things in line. So I'm going to go ahead and place the baffle in the tube. And the other thing I want to do first is take some sandpaper and scuff up the metal where the weld, JB weld's going to go. Just to make a little bit better adhesion. And then also right here at the top. Okay, and I've already got some JB weld pre-mixed, so we can go ahead and slide this on. Yeah, this is going to be nice. Yeah, let me take a little bit of JB weld and just run it. I'm just going to rotate the tube. There we go. And some more on this side. There, just like so. Now I need to run this further down the tube so we can use the body tube actually to align our rings. Okay, let me go ahead and run them up into the weld. Let me rotate it to help distribute it. Okay, now I'm going to run this further up. Now I'm going to get that centering ring in the tube, just like so. And it will hold the centering rings in alignment. Oh, I got a nice little fillet there too. That's going to work out nicely. In fact, I can, since we're here, I can kind of go ahead and build up a little fillet on the back side as well. And this is something we're just going to have to let it sit and dry. Can't really play with it too much at this point. So I'm going to let it sit overnight. And then we'll remove it from the body tube. And then we can get the body tube ready for fins, launch lugs, all that good stuff. But so there we go. All right, so that's just going to hold our... Yeah, that's going to work out nicely. Okay. So tomorrow I'll be able to slide this whole unit back out, and then yeah, we can get cranking. But anyway, I wanted to show you how we attach the centering rings to that conduit. So yeah, let me just let that roll over like that. Okay, so the hardest part of modeling, waiting. Okay, now we've come to the point where we need to mark our body tube for our fin placement and our launch lug placement. And to do that, we're going to use my tried and true and favorite Estes building tools, the alignment guide and the marking guide. First thing we want to do is go ahead and make the 4 marks on the body tube as to where the fins are going to go. So I'm going to gently lay that on top of that little template. And there's a bunch of little guidelines along the bottom edge here. You want to just mark at the notches where the 4 fins are going to go. Okay. Now this does not have the ability to mark at the 45-degree angle for the launch lugs. So what I'm going to do is take a guide that I've used in the past. This is actually from a Mean Machine kit, but it's got the 4 fin placements as well as the launch lug. So I'm going to just lay the arrows in line with the 2 fins, and then I'm going to be able to mark right in the middle where the launch lug is. Just like so. So now we've got, I'm going to put L for launch lug. Okay, so now we've got the 4 fins and the launch lug marked. Now we can come to our marking guide, lay it down. Let me turn it this way so you can see a little bit better. And I'm just gonna lay this right up against the first notch. And just draw a line. Okay, rotate it to the next one. And our 4th one. Now, for the last line we draw for the launch lug, we're going to draw that full length because I want a good reference line to lay the launch lugs up against. So let me line this up. And I'm just going to draw my line full length. Okay. So now we've got our positioning lines for the fins and the launch lug. And now I want to take some sandpaper, and if you've seen any of my previous build videos, I like to glue the fins on, not on top of the line directly, but just off to the sides so the pencil line lines up with the edge of the fin. That's, for me, I find that as an easier reference to line up with. So I'm going to sand on the line and a little bit to the right of each of these. Just a light sand. I'm not going to remove any of the, well, just a little bit of the pencil mark. Just enough to scuff it up and remove that glass look to it, the shiny, waxy look. That'll allow the glue to adhere better. Okay, and the launch lug. One down here and one up in this area. We'll measure it more precise later, but that's just a rough ballpark idea of where they're going to go. Okay, now we can glue the fins on. So let me take some wood glue, paper towel, and first thing we want to do is run a bead of glue down the root edge. Okay, just like that. Okay, we want to use our finger and lightly spread it. Use your paper towel to wipe your finger off with. Now this is where what I was talking about, lining it up on the right side edge, is important. I'm going to line it up at the bottom base, up against that mark, lay it down, roll it a little bit, and then lift it off. Okay? Now we're going to let that dry for about a minute so it can tack up on us. While I wait for that to dry, what I can do is I can rotate the body tube and actually set up the next one. So we can get going on the second fin while the first one's tacking up. Okay. A little bit much here on the bottom half. Okay. Like I said, we're going to rotate it 180 degrees. We're going to lay it on this line here. Just touch it and roll it and lift it. Okay, now, guess what? That side is now pretty much ready to go. So I can set that fin down, pick up my first fin, and we can go ahead and lay this down permanently. Okay, again, line it up at the bottom on the line. Up against our pencil mark, press firmly, and release, and there you go. Okay, you want to side it from behind. While it's still a little tacky, you can maneuver it a little bit. You can work it vertical. Okay, that looks really good. We're straight with the tube and we're straight vertical. We're not leaning left or right. Okay. So now we're coming to this side and it's just about done too. So let me grab the other fin. Kind of blow dry just a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna lay that on the base. Line it up with our pencil mark. Set it on, press firmly. Okay, get from behind, line it up. And you can actually see, let me hold the camera, I don't know if you can see how well they're perpendicular to one another. But that's pretty good by my standard. So I'm gonna let these harden a little bit before I attempt the other side, because when you're doing this side, they could possibly lay down from gravity. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this up on the stand that we originally used and hold it vertical and let those dry. So I'm gonna come back after these are dried up and do the other two fins the same way, and then we'll get back to progress here on the rocket. Okay, here's an update on things. I went ahead and did the fin fillets and the launch lugs off camera. You've seen me do that enough times on other videos, and I just wanted to get it done so they have time to dry, because I've got other things to do, which I will show you while these are drying. Simple fillet with the rock epoxy. The only difference I will point out to you is that instead of using a standard popsicle stick, which is what I normally do for the fillets, I went ahead and used a larger tongue depressor. I wanted a little bit bigger fillet, making it a little bit stronger, and I kind of wanted to test it out. So basically this is the exact same fillet that I've got on my Zephyr, because that's the size that I used for the radius on the Zephyr's fillet. So yeah, just beef it up a little bit, make it stronger. This is going to be carrying a lot of weight with the two stages and the extra gear on board, so it may come down a little harder than the RAV-4. So I just, again, wanted to beef things up a little bit. So I got that on, I got the launch lugs in. Those are 3/16 inch launch lugs, so I'll have to use the larger launch rod. But yeah, just wanted to catch you up to speed on that. Let me set this aside while we work on the next part of the project, which is the motor mount. Now, the motor mount, I found something very interesting about that. Let me kind of walk you through my plan of attack here as well. So the motor mount, or I should say the booster, is going to consist of two sections. This is the entire booster section that will slide onto the coupler that will stick out the bottom of the rocket. So the rocket's here, booster. This is going to be the motor mount section, and this is going to be the upper section. Now this is set to break away with the coupler, and I'm going to glue a bulkhead on the inside. In fact, we're going to do that right now. That's where I'm going to stage my little, or store my little parachute, because the booster is going to come down under chute. In theory, it'll work. And then the motor will, of course, be on this side. So these will have to be tied with a tether shock cord, and that's why I've got on this bulkhead an eye hook. So let's go ahead and build the upper portion first, and then we'll get to the booster with the fins and the motor mount, because there is an issue with the motor mount I need to discuss as well. So let me get all the motor mount stuff out of the way for now. Let's go ahead and get this eyelet. Okay, now I'm going to glue this into a coupler, and it's going to go like so. Yeah, so I'm going to want the eyelet on the inside. So get some wood glue. And we're going to screw this all the way in to the end of the threads, but we're going to keep threads in the wood so it's still got some good purchase to it. Okay, there. Now it's already built up its own little fillet, but I do want to create a little bit of a fillet on the bottom side. Okay. Just like so. Okay, we're going to let that sit and dry for a second. Okay, now the other thing we want to ensure we do before we make things too permanent is I need to make sure that this is all glued in with enough space for the, let's see if I can get all this to fit, for the motor that's going to stick out. Now let me show you how I'm going to measure that. Let me grab my motor mount. Okay. This is the motor mount that's going to go in the bottom of the rocket. So let's go ahead and temporarily put it up in here. And then remember, we're going to use a coupler, and it's marked off at the at the 3/4 inch mark, which is halfway up the tube. And we're going to push that in to that point there. Okay. Now with that, this coupler, this upper portion of the booster is going to slide on there. Now, where do I put the coupler? That's going to house the bulkhead. It's got to be well beyond the motor. So let's measure the motor, how far out it is. Okay, the motor is going to be sticking out just shy of 1 1/4 inches. Okay. Now that's what, let me see. I'm gonna give its allowance more because I've got the cap screwed on. So let's call it 1 3/4 inch. I'm gonna call it 1 3/4 inch out. So I got to go at least that far, 1 3/4. Let's see, I don't want to have too much sticking out on the bottom. I'm thinking this out loud as I go here. So let's do a 1/2 inch sticking out. Okay. So with a 1/2 inch sticking out, that leaves basically 1 inch sticking in. So this is going to stick in 1 inch. Okay, so that's going to give us 3 inches. So that's going to give us what I say we need to have here, 1 3/4. That's going to give us a little over an inch, about 1 1/4 inches of gap between the bulkhead and the motor. That should be close enough where this just gets blasted off. When this motor ignites, it's going to just blast the whole section, the lower section off. So that's good to know. So let's go ahead and we can go and get this started. Yeah, let me run some wood glue. On the inside here. Again, we want the eyelet facing inward. And also, if you notice, the taper on the bulkhead is in that direction as well. So we're going with the taper, which helps. Okay, I want to insert it just a skosh on the inside, so then I got room to run a little bit of a fillet after this sets up. Okay, so we're gonna let that sit for a second. Okay, back to this. So let me try to illustrate this by stacking it so you can see the gap. Okay, so that's going to be up to that point there. This is going to be 1 inch in. Oops. So you can see the gap there, about 1.25 inches between the back of the motor and this bulkhead here. So that chamber will heat up and then blow this whole portion off. And again, and then on the inside, that's where we're gonna house part of our parachute. It's gonna be a small chute, and it won't take much because all we're bringing down is this section here with the fins and the motor mount on the inside. So a 12-inch should be more than sufficient. If I could do a 15, I'd love to, but we'll play that by ear when we get to it. Okay, so while that's setting up a little bit before I run my fillet and then glue it in, I do want to talk a little bit about this motor mount situation for the booster. So the Rocketarium 24mm mount I got is right here. It comes with the paper tube and these centering rings, which are perfect for what we're after, with one exception. Here's an E-motor, and if I install, which I plan on doing, the motor retainer, it's going to slide right on there. Okay, and if we stick the motor out maybe 1/8 of an inch like we normally do, well, the motor sticks out beyond the tube, so there's nowhere to set a thrust ring or engine block. So this tube is ideal for D engines, but it's not going to work for the E. So I had to take a piece of BT50 motor, body tube, and we're going to have to cut this to length. So with this on, now one other thing to note, the Estes motor caps, there's a lot of slop, and you've seen this on previous builds. So I'm going to have to double the thickness of this tube. So what I've got here is my BT50 cutting guide, and we're just going to have to cut off that much. Okay, so get that on nice and snug. Take a single edge razor. Okay, let's snug it up a little bit more there. It was sliding on me. Okay, so I still have plenty of tube here. Bear with me, this is really tight. Okay, there we go. Plenty of tube here for our motor, okay? So I'll set that aside for a second. This, we're gonna have to cut this, because this is gonna go on the inside. We're gonna have to split it like that and glue it on to the end of our new body tube. So we'll just, before I do that, let me just get some sandpaper and scuff this up just a bit. It's not probably that critical, and it should be fine, but it doesn't hurt. Make a little bit better adhesion. Okay, so let's run a bead of glue around this lip here. Okay, take our finger, spread it. And then we'll just wrap this on like that. Make sure it's flush to the end. Okay. So that will make a nice snug fit with no gap. I'm gonna let that sit for a little bit because we need to obviously mix up some JB weld. So while we mix that up, we can let that dry up a little bit more. So let me go ahead and get the JB weld out. Normally, I like to have these things pre-mixed, but I didn't know how long it'd take till we were ready for this part. Now this is just going to take just a dab, not even much at all. Just one little dollop at the end of from the end of the tip there. And even this is going to be too much, but okay, let's get this mixed up. Black and white mix should turn into a nice gray color when we have it evenly mixed. Okay, I'm going to take some sandpaper and scuff up the inside of the plastic end. Okay. Same thing on this. I'm going to scuff up this a little bit. Okay. Now I want to put the glue on this ring, so as I push it in, it'll ooze backward instead of coming out the front, and I'll have to clean that up. So let's do it on this end. Okay. Okay, we'll take this end and kind of twist as we go to help spread it better until it bottoms out. Okay, there is a little bit of seepage in there, which is normal. I'm going to take a Q-tip and some alcohol and just wipe the inside of that joint. There's a little bit of gray there, so a little bit came out. Okay. Nice. And one other thing, we can go ahead and put that front centering ring on. I'm sorry, the rear centering ring, which is going to be this part right here. The one with the less gap in there for the engine hook. So let me take the wood glue again. Dry it up on the tip there. Okay, spread this around. Take our ring, slide it on, and just push it flat. That way everything can dry together. Okay, and we can go ahead and make our little fillet on the back side too. Now you notice I haven't cut the body tube yet to length because I'm going to get the centering ring in first, and cut right up to that point, because I want to minimize the amount of tube sticking out, because that'll just interfere with our ability to put more wadding and the chute in there. So I'm going to use the engine and the centering ring, or I'm sorry, the motor mount, as our depth gauge to where to cut. So I take my motor, slip it in, and I like to set mine about 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 to 3/16 actually. We can go with 3/16 here. Okay. Take our cap and put it on right to where it touches the motor. Which is right there. Now we have a depth for our centering ring. So, did I push it in a little bit? Looks like it did. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna get my toothpick, put a little bit of wood glue on it. And put just a little bit, but far enough from the engine that it's gonna have to run through the glue on its way down. Get a little bit more. Okay. Let's get our engine right where we want it. Okay. And insert our center engine block. We'll use the yellow tube that came with the kit as a spacer to push it in. There we go. And take this out before it sticks. And there we go. Now we've got the centering, I keep saying centering ring, the thrust ring or engine block in there. Gonna let that set up for a little bit, and then I'm gonna take this tube cutter and cut just above the ring. And that'll give us, again, the more tube you can cut off, the more space you have for parachute and wadding. So now we're gonna let all that just sit and dry for a little bit. Okay, now we can come to the bottom part of the booster. While all this other stuff is drying, let me slide things out of the way here. Well, before we do that, actually, this bulkhead is now set up well enough. Let me go ahead and get, I don't know how that moved on me a little bit. That's okay, so I'm gonna run a little bit of a fillet around this inner lip. Okay. That should help hold that up a little bit better. And we can go ahead and glue that in now as well to the upper portion of the booster. Again, we wanted about 3/4 of an inch. Let's go with 3/8 of an inch sticking up. Get my pencil. Okay, there's 3/8 of an inch. So let's run a bead of glue. And this will be a pretty thick bead of glue because it's going to have a lot of coverage area for that coupler. Okay, and we're going to put this in up to that line I drew. Okay, there we go. And kind of hard reach, but I can kind of reach down there and help make a fillet. There we go. Okay, so you can see the one side's got the eyelet. That's going to go down toward the bottom part of the booster and should house the what little bit of a parachute I can squeeze in there. And then the upper portion is going to be the clearance for the upper stage motor and that coupler. Okay, so now that is good to sit and dry. Another paper towel. Okay, now we can go on to the fins on the lower booster. Okay, to do that, I'm going to take my little marking guide, that same guide that I used on the upper body, and I'm going to slide it on there, take my pencil, and I'm going to mark all 4 90-degree marks. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. Now let me go get my line marking guide and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm just gonna line this up here and draw my 4 lines. Okay, so I've got the one center line that's right in the middle. That's going to be where the bottom of the fins are going to line up. And I've got the 4 full length lines. Let me grab my fins. And I'm going to glue these on the same way I did the actual rock at the upper portion. Just going to glue them on the right side of the line, which is a lot easier reference to use, like so. Okay, so once again, get the wood glue out. Okay. Okay, at this point, it doesn't really matter which side you go with, but once you stick with one, go with one side, you gotta stick with it. Okay, so I've got a bottom line for the corner. I'll lay it down, roll it a little, and lift. Okay, so I'm gonna set this aside and let that tack up for a minute. And while it dries, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side. It saves a lot of time this way. Okay, Okay, so now we want to go the opposite side, 180 degrees. Okay, and let that dry. Now, we've had a minute go by, so I can go ahead and go back to this first fin and glue it on permanently. Okay, look for perpendicularity. It is parallel with the rocket tube, the body tube, because of that line. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to take a Q-tip and just kind of wipe out that part that seeped out, because that'll interfere with putting our fill in later. So just kind of clean that edge up a little bit. Not too bad. Okay, now we can go ahead and put the other fin on. And now we get to check the two to make sure they're directly across from each other. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. Okay, we had a little bit come out here, so we'll spread that out. Okay, now while that sets up, we can go ahead and get the other two going. Okay, and we'll get the other side going. Okay, and it's been more than a minute, so we can glue this side on. And we can go and glue this side on. Again, looking from overhead, you can basically see the perfect cross that we've drawn there with the opposing fins. They should be across from each other, and they are. So that all looks really good. Okay, now I'm gonna set it on the stand here to help it hold vertical, so they won't kind of droop one way or the other. So just one last check. Okay, everything's good. So we're gonna let that dry, and then we can come back and get our motor mount glued in and cut to the right size. Actually, we can cut that now because it's already set up on the inside. So let me set this aside. We can come back to this. Now you may feel a little bit more resistance than normal because there's already glue that's dried, so we're cutting through cardboard and glue. But like a hot knife through butter, it's not too bad at all, really. I mean, you can feel the resistance, but it's not an issue. Okay, there we have it. And there's actually just maybe a hairline lip there that we can actually glue up to as a fillet. And we'll go ahead and do that now. All right, so we will now take a break while that sets up, and then we'll come back and glue on our other centering ring, and as well as the shot cord that will mount to the inside of that eye hook there. So things are gonna kind of look this direction once it's all said and done. Okay, I've got the boosters all finished and painted, and everything's done here. So it's time to go ahead and glue the motor mount into the bottom booster. Now, one thing I want to do is I want to run the motor mount from the bottom up, but the problem is that's going to be running the shock cord into the glue. So the way you get around that is you run your shock cord through the motor mount and out the back side. That way now it's out of the way, and I can go ahead and run the glue up the booster tube and then slide the motor mount up into place. Now, before we do that though, I want to show you one thing. I've been kind of playing with different sizes of parachutes, but because I'm going to run a parachute on this booster, I found that a 9-inch nylon fits quite nicely. It rolls up into a nice little ball, wraps up with the shroud line, and when it unfurls, it'll open up nicely to bring this down softly. Now, one thing I'm going to do is when I set this up with the motor mount installed, I want at least maybe 18 inches gap between the two. So I've gone ahead and cut the shock cord, which is Kevlar, about 18 inches, but I need to allow for a little bit to tie into that knot down there. But what I was thinking about also doing was running some elastic around the eyelet and tying it to the shock cord here. So we probably maybe have 6 to 9 inches of elastic. That way you get a little shock absorption, because this is going to be a pretty short discharge out of an E motor, and that's going to be quite a blast. So I don't want to use straight Kevlar. I want a little bit of a cushion with some elastic. So that'll tie into that pretty nicely. So let's go ahead and get the motor mount. Oh, one thing I also want to show too is if you notice, right at the halfway point of the Kevlar, I've got a little loop tied into the knot. And what that's going to do is that's going to be our anchor point for our parachute. And by mounting it there, what's going to happen is as the shock cord is being pulled out of the tubes, instead of it going full length and then the parachute being stuck up in the booster, because it's tied halfway, as the shock cord's pulling out, it's going to pull the parachute out with it. So that's going to help us get that ejection of the chute. Okay, so we can set that aside. Now we're going to focus mainly on the booster and the motor mount. So again, let me route the Kevlar through there. Okay, and we want to run the glue. We're going to mount the lower ring maybe 1/8 of an inch in. That gives me room to set up a little bit of a fillet. So that means the top ring, if I'm using this Q-tip for measurement, it's going to be right at about that point. Let me just make a little mark. Ink is not working on the Q-tip quite as well as maybe a pencil would. There we go. All right. So now I know at least I've got to go at least that far down with the glue so it'll mate into the glue. So we'll go ahead and pull that out. Run some glue. Let me do it this way. And the more glue you use, the more working time you'll have, because it'll actually act as a lubricant. If you don't use enough glue, it'll bind up really quickly, and you definitely don't want that to happen. Okay. Let me look in there and see if we got full coverage. You do one more round, just for added security, because I really can't afford to let this stick on us when we put the motor mount in. Okay, that's good. Okay, from the bottom we're going to run the first ring up and then use the same Q-tip I can use to run a bead of glue around the base. Okay, so we'll go ahead and push this forward. We'll feel the resistance in the glue. In fact, I start to feel it right there. Start twisting. There we go. And there's our 1/8 inch. Let me just kind of twist it to spread the glue a little bit better. Okay, it's an 1/8 inch, 1/16 of an inch. Okay, there we have it. And yeah, that looks real good. That looks about perfect. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and run a little bit of a fillet around the base. And you can just use your finger for that. Okay, leave it sitting like so. Okay, and once that dries, I'm gonna just go ahead and leave the shock cord sticking out the bottom. It's not in the way, it's dry, it's safe, so I'm just gonna leave that while all that glue dries up inside there. Okay, so now we're gonna do a very similar thing to the rocket itself, the sustainer, but we're gonna use epoxy for that because we've got a lot more things we gotta slide in. I need more working time. So I'm gonna go mix up some epoxy. We'll come right back and we'll glue in the main motor mount and baffle. Okay, now we've reached the point where we're going to glue in the motor mount, the conduit for the air start wiring, and our baffle, all in the main body tube of the rocket. And kind of a bittersweet thing. I'm excited to do it, but at the same time, I'll never see that again. That's kind of a sad thing, but I'd rather see it working than out of the rocket not doing nothing. I've already got some 30-minute epoxy pre-mixed, ready to go. And this is a tool that you may remember I used back on the I want to say it was on my Mean Machine, if I'm not mistaken, but it's basically a little tool I made to protect the shock cord from getting into any epoxy that's in the body tube. I just made up a little BT60 centering ring out of a piece of cardboard and 1/2 inch PVC pipe, and it's better to just show you how I use it than try to explain it. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is insert this up from the front. Get the ring in, push that in quite a ways, and then you can hopefully be able to see it from the back side there. Tell you what, before we do that, we need to apply our epoxy to the inside. Well, in a nutshell, what I'm going to do is I'm going to route this in, run the shock cord through the pipe, and then pull the pipe out when everything's done. So I've got a little dowel here that I've already pre-measured. It's the full length up to the bottom of this little expelled rocket motor here. So I'm going to run the epoxy that deep in, make a nice little, you know what I could probably do? No, I was thinking do it from the back side, but then this would not be, no, I don't think that's going to work good. So let me just go ahead and get some epoxy on the end of my dowel here. Okay. Route this in. Spread it. Okay. And we're going to do that a few times. And maybe a third time. I want good coverage. Okay. Now with that, I can install my little protector piece here. Okay. Now I'm going to have to do this off camera, but I'm going to run the rocket vertical so I can drop the shock cord down the pipe. So bear with me 1 second here while I do that. Okay, so I can push this in. Let me turn this around. Yeah, now I can access that. Let me use some epoxy here. And spread it around. I may not have enough epoxy, but I typically do this with wood glue anyway, so if I don't have enough epoxy, I'm going to do the back centering ring with wood glue. In fact, I know that's the case because I'm already running out, but that's fine because like I said, I normally use wood glue anyway. Okay. So I can lay that in like so. And let me get my wood glue out. And let me get another Q-tip. Oops. And then one thing we're going to do too is once we get it in position, I'm going to glue my coupler in, and that'll hold the centering rings in their proper place. Okay. So I'm going to kind of twist as I go here. And you can see it's pushing my, well, there, it's pushing the PVC out. There, its centering ring just popped out, which is good. Let me run this into position. Okay, now, let me get that cap off and out of the way. I want to run wood glue on the inside and run the coupler up around. Okay. Coupler's already pre-marked at the halfway point, so insert it. Okay, and in fact, this is kind of being a nuisance, so I'll pull that out. That's free and clear. Push this in. I'm gonna go a little, oh, it might have blocked up on me. Nah, we can still go just a little more. Okay. Okay, that was a huge accomplishment there. That was good. That was a major part of the build. So you can see I got a little bit of glue right there on my threads of the engine cap. Let me wipe that up with a wet Q-tip. There. Okay. Okay, so we've got the coupler pushed up against the bottom centering ring, which is the right distance we want. Now we've got the cap is easily accessible to get the motor in and out. And one thing I was doing, you probably didn't realize I was doing it. If you notice, the launch lugs are on this side. Well, I ran the conduit for the air start on the opposite side. Why? Just because I like to keep things symmetrical, and that just seemed like the right thing to do. So that is set and glued now. The centering rings are glued with wood glue. Well, the front ring is epoxy, and then I've got the baffle glued in with epoxy. And let me look down from the top. Oh, nice. I can see a nice little fillet. Perfect. Okay, and we've got good length of shock cord sticking out. This will be attached to some nylon elastic band. And yeah, this is really coming along. So now one thing I'm theorizing here. I don't know if there's any truth to it. Because of all the mechanical stuff I put in the back with the brass tubing and everything, this portion of the rocket is going to be a little more tail heavy than it normally would. Now, a lot of times when I've flown two-stage rockets, the booster on the back obviously makes it, a little more tail heavy. But once the booster breaks off, suddenly the rockets become a lot more nose heavy, and they tend to weather vane quite a bit, and they'll arc over, into the wind. But I'm hoping that with this extra weight in the back, that might help keep the rocket a little more stable on the way up, and it won't be as nose heavy as it normally would be. So again, that's just, I'm theorizing some aerodynamics there. I don't know how true that may or may not be, but anyway, sounds good to me, so I'm gonna stick with it. So I'm just gonna let that sit and dry. I've got my booster drying. We'll come back when well, basically we're done with the mechanical side of things. We're gonna come back and put on some decals and do some clear coat, tie up the loose ends, and this rocket will be ready to fly. Okay, we are now going to apply the decals to the rocket. Not too complicated and not that many either. We have just the one that label that says RAV-4 that's going to go right on the main body. And then I've got 4 smaller ones that say the RFC/ACE vehicle, which is what the RAV stands for. And each 4 of those are just going to go down here between each fin. And it's the same thing I've done on RAV-1, 2, and 3. So very, very straightforward process. I want to put this decal directly opposite of the launch lugs. So I'm going to aim the launch lugs down on the stand. Lay this down in the water. And I've got my Q-tip ready and a paper towel ready to squeegee out the excess water. This usually doesn't take too long to break free. There it goes. Okay, just smear some water on there. Okay. Now I'll just do some aligning. Okay, blot out some of the water. And then from there we can just kind of work with the Q-tip to push any water and air out. Work it this way. Okay, looks good. Okay, it slid on me just a little bit. You gotta be so careful and apply minimal pressure. There we go. I'm gonna hold one end of the decal down while I kind of swipe across. There we go. That is perfect. I know it's upside down for you, but I just wanted to stare at it and make sure it was good on my end. I'm going to do one of these decals here at the bottom, and I'll do the other 3 off camera, because then that's going to get repetitive. I'm just going to drop it in the water. Turn the rocket this way. Now for this one, I'm going to use my tweezers only because it's so much smaller. Okay. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and do the other 3 the same way, and I'm gonna do some finalizing on the boosters, kind of off camera, just getting the some of the shroud lines or the shock cords attached and all that tedious little stuff. But we'll come back and do a kind of a highlight showing what I've done to it. Okay, this is the final wrap up on the building of the RAV-4. Now I know a lot of things were done behind the scenes, off camera. And a lot of that is because I was, as I mentioned before, kind of making it up as I go along. I ran into some things I hadn't anticipated, and had I been recording that, it would have been like awkward. So because this was my first time doing it on the fly, it was just best I did a lot of things just off on the side. But it is now complete, it's ready to fly, and I want to show you the final product before we take it out to the field. So let's start, well, let's start at the tail because that's where flights usually begin. And I apologize, the rocket's so long, it's not gonna fit too well on the bench here, so we're just gonna have to kind of piece our way through it. So at the base of the rocket, obviously, we've got the booster. It will have an E12, probably a 4, the lowest I can get, so probably an E12 4, and I'll tell you why in a second. So I'll put an E12 4, cap it in tight. It's gonna launch the rocket. Propel it to whatever it may get it up to, and remember, I've got the RFC up front. I'll get back to that in a second too, but just remember, we've got a computer up here that can detect deceleration. So upon ignition, obviously we have acceleration. The booster will propel the rocket up, and when the RFC detects that momentary, hesitation and climb, it will send a signal, which I'll show you. Well, you've seen the conduit through the wiring, through the rocket tube, to stage the sustainer motor, which is going to be right up in here. Now, when it lights that motor, that thrust is going to propel the booster off. Okay, so then this falls away. These are the wires that are going to be connected to the igniter, by the way. And this motor also will be capped in. So no motors will be coming out of this rocket. They're all going to stay on board. So that motor is going to be capped. I should have had that cap on to begin with. Anyway, that's going to ignite the sustainer once it senses that deceleration. Okay, so getting back to then imagine this is going to continue on upward. Now, go back to this. The lower the delay I could get, the better, but I need some delay so it would clear the rocket. So E12-4 would be sufficient, probably, I hope. 4 seconds isn't too long. But after 4 seconds of burning out, obviously, this is going to set off an ejection charge. When it does, it's going to blow this front cap off, which conveniently houses a 9-inch parachute. So theoretically, everything here will come down under chute. I mean, boosters fall all the time without chutes, and that's typically okay, but on the terrain I fly on, I had quite a bit of damage from the rock. So I'm going to see if I can get that parachute to come open. Again, it's just a nylon 9-inch, nothing huge, but just something to slow it down. So that's going to come down on its own. Okay, so back to the rocket. So it's going to continue accelerating upward to apogee. When it hits apogee, oh, and I should also point out, this motor in here is going to be an 18 millimeter. So we can run, C motors, S to C motors, but ideally I want to get to running Quest D motors, the composites, which is why we obviously need the onboard ignition. So it's going to take it up, and at apogee, when the RFC detects apogee, it will deploy the ACE. Now y'all know the ACE inside and out. It's fairly well known now. Here's the ACE unit. It will open, take the parachute with it, and then this whole thing comes down to a chute. And then whenever this thing decides to eject, whatever the delay on it, it can then eject the ACE unit off of the main body tube. I'll have a breakaway electrical wire, so they won't be solidly mounted, so they can, again, separate safely. And a parachute in there with the shock cord. That's all good to go. And see if I can get that put back together. Oh no, because I've got stuff hanging out the side. There we go. Okay, so that's going to come down under also the backup later, but initially the ACE chute. Up front, we're going to have this coupler, which is permanently mounted. It'll be screwed down, but again, it'll house the RFC, any extra altimeter I may run, probably the Jolly Logic 2, and or the new egg timer ion that I've built. And I also want to mount the egg timer GPS tracker, the mini, which you may have seen the build video on it. And it can go anywhere up here. And I've got the full nose cone as well to store altimeters, GPSs, whatever I want to put. So that is the conclusion of the RAV-4. It's a fun build, a unique design. Right now, a lot of this is in theory going to work. It hasn't been proven yet, obviously. But hopefully in the next couple days, I'm going to get out to the launch site and do some test flights. So that wraps up this build video of the RAV-4. Thanks for taking your time out of your day to watch it. Believe me, however long you spent watching wasn't nearly as long as it took me to build this thing. This has been going on for weeks now, and you're probably seeing it in a matter of 1 or 2 hours. But yeah, it's been a fun project. I'm anxious to see it fly. I'm excited to see it fly, and I hope we have good results. So with that, I'll let you go. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. God bless, and we'll see you on the next build.